Hey guys, today I'm going to demonstrate how to paint a hyper-realistic oil portrait by hand. In this demonstration, I shall guide you through the steps necessary to achieve this goal, and in the process of doing so, my hope is that you will find the information useful and can implement the practical techniques that you see in action. Painting the second layer on canvas is when real painting begins. Due to the constraint of keeping this video to within a certain time frame, I have skipped showing the underpainting phase and immediately get busy working on the eyes, nose and mouth. If you are curious about the foundation, please take a look at my previous demonstrations. I believe this decision strikes a fine balance between the attention span of the viewer and informative content. So, how do I go about painting this portrait? It's worth noting that creating any semblance of realism is transforming multiple strokes of paint on a two-dimensional surface into a three-dimensional object. I start by drafting the basic outline and proportions of the face. I then paint the first layer of paint on the canvas, known as the underpainting. At this stage, outlines, proportions, they do not need to be flawless. But having said that, starting out with a more accurate underpainting by taking the task more seriously will make the job easier. This was in fact the main obstacle that I faced in this portrait. This is a nice way to say that I was lazy and cutting corners during the underpainting phase, and as a result, I had to put in extra effort later on to make up for my laziness at the beginning. But then again, had I been more thoughtful and my mood was perfectly aligned with the moon and the stars, you would not get to see how an underwhelming foundation is transformed into the finished piece. And knowing the final outcome, I can forgive myself. Naturally, you may be wondering, what exactly is a hyper-realistic portrait, and what makes this demonstration different compared to others? To answer the first question, I will briefly describe the painting styles most often utilized to paint portraits. They are Impressionism, Realism, and Hyperrealism. Impressionism is more about making an impression than a strict rendering of the subject matter. Brushstrokes are loose, and there's less demand that both shapes and colors are accurate. There's little or no transition between colors, as blending is not required. As such, it will be much quicker to complete. If you have viewed my previous videos of painting figures and portraiture in one layer of paint, you will immediately comprehend what I mean. Realism is characterized by a level of accuracy and minimal distortion. There is more emphasis on color transitions and making it more realistic. Thus, realism separates itself from Impressionism, where the processes are clearly visible. Hyperrealism is a visual representation that seeks to depict reality with a high level of precision. It strives to capture minute details with meticulous accuracy, paying close attention to texture and smooth transitioning of colors. The answer to the second question is the lack of demonstrations of hand-painted hyperrealistic artwork. There are clips of brief demonstrations painting extremely detailed work by hand, but by closer observation, the demonstrations are generally short and partial, and most importantly, lacking continuity. As an example, You may see a small section of the overall canvas painted to a very high degree of accuracy, along with matching colors. But the immediate surrounding area is left blank without any paint. It is not built on subsequent layers of paint by evaluating the surrounding values as you progress, but rather coloring in squares before proceeding to the next. This outward painting approach is very unlikely the result of painting by hand alone. A little more about underpaintings and the purpose they serve. It sketches out the main shapes and establishes a tonal range, guiding the composition and illumination. Painting a whole canvas at once allows you to ascertain and estimate the overall values going forward. See it as a point of reference. The term value in art means the relative lightness and darkness. The proper use of value gives the illusion of both depth and form. This influences the glow and vitality of subsequent layers, as you will see shortly. Normally, a total of 3 layers of paint, sometimes 4, is demanded on top of each other. The last layer is reserved for the highlights and intricate details. Each layer must dry fully before applying the next coat. This is known as layering. Multiple layers enhances color richness and depth. Color permeation occurs from the second layer onwards, where colors from underneath permeate the surface. The next step is to set the tone by focusing on the darkest and lightest areas, also known as value contrast. The brightness of one color affects the lightness of the color adjacent to it. Lightness is the property of color that describes the degree of brightness. Always aim for high contrast. Low contrast with light tonal values or dark tonal values at the early stage is not ideal. There is less visual information available to help you. Having strong contrasting colors is always easier to paint than an evenly lit, little contrast and no strong shadows. Painting is hard enough. We want the painting experience to be enjoyable and causing minimal stress. From what I just outlined of my painting process, the term trial and error may come to mind as to what I am doing. I would say continuous evaluation describes this type of painting process more accurately. The term trial and error is not appropriate in this instance because the connotation is that we are not confident in what we are doing and expecting to make unforeseen mistakes. We are not here to doodle and hoping for the best. Hope does not guarantee results. We have a plan, we have a proven process, and we follow it strictly with the surety that all will come together in the end. Blending or blurring colors is where 2 or more colors are mixed together, giving a smooth, gradual color transition. Capturing softness of the skin is more than just subtle transitioning and blending of the colors. It needs to give the feel of softness of the skin to the viewer. Here, I utilize my own blending techniques to create the soft, gentle appearance of the skin. Gentle blending motions and controlled rhythm is key for the smooth skin texture feel. Human skin are either smooth or less smooth. I have yet to come across naturally occurring hard lines or sharp edges on breathing individuals. Visible hard lines in painting tend to suggest or indicate the edges of a solid object. An overlooked skill in oil painting is the ability to mix colors at will. Since there are so many shades of different colors available on the market, it is tempting to sweep them all off the shelf and skip learning to color mix altogether. Even if the complete purchasing cost is of no hindrance to the art enthusiast, they will quickly find that commercial paints still doesn't offer all the shades they need for optimal color accuracy. Readily available paint cannot accurately compensate for the skin tone variation between individuals of the same ethnicity. The complexity increases when you consider different skin tones of people from different backgrounds. Add in the lighting condition and you have a subtle temperature shift to take into account as well. There is not a mathematical equation available to give a definitive ratio to the amount of white, red and yellow needed to achieve the exact skin tone. Only by experience can we take into account the brightness level, the temperature shift, and directional light source. To enhance the authentic portrayal, we should aim to mix colors to as close to reality as we can. On the subject of mixing colors, let's talk about the difference between painting in grayscale and painting in color, and if one is easier than the other. Painting in just black, white and varying shades of grey is known as grayscale. A pure grayscale painting has a restrictive palette because it has no color. When colors are removed from an image, they lose their hue and saturation. They are only defined by their value. When adding color to an image, it is adding back hue and saturation, two additional levels of complexity. While there may be an infinite number of theoretical shades, there is a limit to human perception. We are only concerned with what the human eye can perceive in the real world. For the purpose of this video, we use the common 256 shades ranging from pure white to pure black. When value, hue, and saturation interact, the total variation is 256 times 256 times 256, which is over 16 million variations. The comparison is 256 shades of variation versus 60 million shades of variation. This is not to say that limiting or eliminating the available color range suddenly makes painting easy. Not at all. A grayscale painting needs a wide range of varying shades of grey to denote the skin tone and bone structure when painting human figures. This means two very different colors in the physical world can share the same shade of grey when painted in grayscale. This is up to the painter to distinguish and discern. Hence, focusing on grayscale, in theory, is a great starting point to advance color mixing ability. They are easier to control when the only concern is value and the distraction of color is eliminated. Without color bias, a grayscale painting has an objective feel. There is an aesthetic quality about them, focusing solely on light and form. In practice, however, limiting yourself to just two colors to optimize learning takes away the fun of mixing colors as you please. In the same way, eating only healthy food to optimize health will take away one of the pleasures of life. So my suggestion in learning to color mix is to learn both. Keep it varied and keep it fun. This way, you are less likely to get bored and lose interest. The two criteria of painting a hyper-realistic portrait are as follows: likeness, expressiveness. To get a likeness, pay close attention to the overall light and atmosphere to create a convincing sense of visual reality. To achieve expressiveness, it requires you to focus on minute details. It can be the intensity of the gaze, a distinct corner of the mouth, or slight crinkle lines around the eyes. These subtleties in appearance may sound trivial, but I assure you they are not. Progressive evaluation throughout the process are the proportions, values, and color. Are they correct? Are they accurate? Is there enough color used? Strive for accurate light and shadow effects. Maintain depth and perspective. Use shadows, reflections, add textures, aim for perfection. Tap into the person's vitality. Bring out that passion and delight in them. It is a matter of fine-tuning the painting, repainting layers and repeating this cycle until the goal is achieved. Yes, it can be very time-consuming, but don't let this discourage you. A successful oil portrait is about capturing the essence and likeness of the sitter, bring out the warmth and glow in a person's complexion. A portrait preserves the individual's qualities and immortalizes their unique nuances. They convey a message which the artist or the person who commissioned the artwork wishes to relay. Regarding the size of portraits, there is no optimal size for a portrait, but painting too small a face equates to using very small brushes, which will increase eye strain in the long run. I would say anything less than half the life size over a long period of time is not ideal. I personally prefer to paint larger than life size, much more imposing, more striking, more nuances to be discovered when viewing. Painters generally excel painting one type of subject matter. Crossover subjects will pose a level of complexity that stops them in their tracks. Someone who triumphs in landscape painting would have difficulty in, let's say, portraiture. I witnessed this occurrence early on and acknowledged the notion of developing a transferable style of painting which is applicable in painting all subject matters and not solely fixed on one. In a hierarchy of genres, fine figurative and portraiture represents the highest form of art. They are the most challenging of all subjects because there is little margin for error. When subtle nuances of appearance is easily noticed, precision and technical perfection is demanded. In general, mastering portraiture and the human form will make painting other subjects so much easier. Once the painting principles are understood and internalized, it is a matter of following the strategy to achieve results. This is not to say a complete beginner must immediately jump into the deep end of the pool to learn to swim, so that swimming on the shallow end becomes easy. One should master the basics first before navigating further into the treacherous waters. How much time should be dedicated to learning each particular skill and in what order? This all comes down to having a plan, efficient time management, and the optimization of structured learning. Painting hair. I purposely vary the brightness and saturation of her hair to create a sense of flow. Some irregular, tangled waves of her hair is deliberate. Gravity-defying strands also make the pose less static and more of a fleeting moment, perfectly captured. When it comes to her eyebrows and lashes, I paint them in her natural state. It is essential to make each brushstroke count, making it purposeful. The amount of pressure I exert varies to control the brushstroke intensity. Midway through, I decided to change the background color. Opting for a darker background makes the lighter areas stand out more and enhances the visual effect. This is one of the advantages of painting in oils than, let's say, painting in watercolor. If you don't like it, paint over it. When it comes to learning art, An aspect not widely discussed is how to solve the mystery of painting on a technical level. Small nuggets of wisdom here and there for a beginner without a concrete approach is like aiming for a shooting target in a fog. A question to ask oneself is this: am I getting the results that I want? If the answer is no, then repeating the same motion day in and day out will not yield a different result. Perhaps it is time to consider an alternative painting process if this is the case. With the right approach and optimal guidance, the learning curve can be significantly reduced, or run the risk of wasting years of your time. I designed my painting method to be simple. Not easy, but simple to follow. It's a culmination of my painting experience, translated into a systematic approach for painting success. A magic bullet does not exist to turn an average person into a painting master overnight. Progress is incremental, but not linear. How far a person can develop does depend on the individual's input. It must be emphasized that a willingness to put in the time cannot be avoided. So, if you want to learn, how do you learn? The most effective way to develop your painting skills is by picking up a brush and start painting today. Common sense, right? As simple as this may sound, how many people wish they can do something but never tried attempting it even once? Indeed, it was Voltaire in Dictionnaire Philosophique who said, "Common sense is not so common." Oil painting is just like any other endeavor that requires a certain skill set to achieve competency. Learning to paint well is no different. You need to learn the right skill set. Contrary to conventional wisdom, this skill set, remarkably, is learnable. Hard work, sacrifice, and a touch of passion will go a long way. A prerequisite to learn anything to a high level is to have a burning desire to succeed. Something that stirs up enough sentiment and arouses in you a sense of passion. Passion is the driving force that propels you forward despite multiple hindrances. Without it, overcoming the hurdles in your painting journey could be unsurmountable due to frustration, boredom, or both. Learning to paint well is not an easy task. Any worthwhile skill is never easy to master. Instead of focusing on a negative, focus on a positive. Instead of looking up to the mountaintop and convincing ourselves how hard it must be to get there, think of the joy and delight that you would feel being at the top and looking back down at your starting point. Consider for yourself if the ultimate reward at the end is worth all the sacrifice demanded of you, whilst also giving you immense fulfillment along the way. The reward is the creative freedom it gives you anywhere you go in the world for the rest of your life. Ask yourself, do you want to have the painting skills? Wishing is not enough. Are you willing to put in endless hours of your time? If your answer is a resounding yes, then make the commitment to do it for yourself. Just like the Nike slogan, just do it. Maybe the process requires your heart and soul, or needing you to sweat and bleed. In spite of your sacrifice, make it a habit to give it your best and never cheat yourself and others by succumbing to the urge of mediocrity. The world is waiting for you to show up. You owe it to yourself. When it comes to art, my definition of a successful painting is knowing that I have exhausted every muscle fiber in me to produce the artwork. Whatever the outcome may be, I can put down my brushes at the end in peace, knowing full well that I have given it my best. In closing, I want to thank you for your time for watching. If you are entertained seeing how a blank canvas is transformed from an uninspiring underpainting to a finished artwork painted by hand, please stay tuned for the next demonstration. If you are curious and would like to find out more about my work, my services, and how I can be of assistance, please visit my website for more details, which can be found in the description box. Until next time.